In our gospel reading for tonight, Jesus has some words of wisdom for us would-be Lenten pilgrims. He makes it clear that when it comes to things like fasting and prayer and acts of sacrificial giving, that we aren't supposed to draw attention to ourselves. Because the point of practicing really any kind of spiritual discipline isn't to receive accolades or attention from other people. No, that is what the hypocrites do. They make a big show of it. They want to make sure that everyone is paying attention, that all eyes are on them when they engage in these kinds of behavior. Instead, Jesus tells us that the point of these disciplines is to help us grow as people, to help us deepen our relationship with God. Interesting side note about Jesus' language here. He says, when you fast, and when you give alms, and when you pray. He doesn't say if you fast, or if you feel so inclined as to give alms, or if you need something and decide to pray for it. No, prayer, fasting, and stewardship are non-negotiables for Jesus. That part of the equation isn't up for debate. They simply are a given. But how we go about doing them, well, now that part is up to us. And how we choose to act does make a difference. Because Lord, help us if we act like those hypocrites that he talks about. That means that we don't blow a trumpet when we put our offering into the plate as it passes us by. Although since we don't pass the offering plates anymore, that really doesn't work. So maybe I should say that means we don't blow a trumpet when the Vanco automatic withdrawal takes money out of our checking accounts. It's more accurate, but it just doesn't have the same ring to it. Anyway, moving on. We're also told that we're not supposed to go out and pray on the street corners so that the whole world can see how pious and faithful we are. And we definitely aren't supposed to mark up our faces and look all somber so that others know that we are fasting. No, Jesus wants us to be subtle. Play it cool, keep it on the DL. Which means that we definitely shouldn't do something as showy as, say, putting big ashen crosses right in the middle of our foreheads. That would just be ridiculous, right? I'm sure that many of you have seen this graphic before. It has a bunch of different styles of crosses that a pastor might choose to do on Ash Wednesday. Maybe just to spice things up this year, we should treat this like a menu and put it up on the screens, and you can just point to whichever one you want when you come up during that time in the service. There's the first in line, which is very dark and bold. There's the load toner, which is a little on the lighter side. I feel like I'm describing blends of coffee right now. There's the Rorschach, which fittingly takes some deciphering to make sense of, and then my personal favorite, the Harry Potter. So, to be perfectly clear, we will not actually be taking requests tonight. I'm barely coordinated enough as it is to hold the bowl in one hand and then use my other hand to both move your hair to the side and make the sign of the cross at the same time, so just no. But all jokes aside, it does seem just a little bit hypocritical to do the whole Ash Wednesday forehead cross when this is the gospel text for tonight. And just in case that you were thinking that maybe it was just, bad luck that this text landed on this night, I hate to say that this is unfortunately the assigned text for every single Ash Wednesday. But as I said before, this gospel text makes a point that we need to look not only at what we do, but why we do what we do. Because the intention and purpose behind our actions really matter. And we have some pretty good reasons for why we engage in such an odd and seemingly hypocritical liturgical act on this night. Remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return. These are the words that Deacon Mindy and I will speak as we of our mortality. It reminds us of how fragile and temporary things are, how fleeting this life can be. And while we can look at that truth with great sadness and wish that it were not so, the fact that things end is part of what makes them so beautiful and precious. The finiteness of life, of time, of the ability to do certain things with certain people, it makes every moment that much more special, more important. It reminds us to savor each experience because we never know whether or not it will be the last time that we get to do it. Being reminded that we are dust, and to dust we shall return, also cuts through all of the different ways that we as humans have tried to separate ourselves from one another. Because we love categories. We love hierarchies and finding ways to label people as one thing or another, in versus out, good versus bad, worthy versus unworthy, hypocritical versus just critical. Well, that one doesn't really work, but you get my point, right? Receiving the mark of the cross, hearing those words, helps remind us that while we might look different, sound different, think or pray or vote or speak or love in ways that are different, on a fundamental level, we are all made of the same stuff. We are all dust. And whether those words are humbling or encouraging to you, they are not meant to diminish or dismiss the importance of our individual lived experiences, the ways that we are wonderfully unique. No, instead, they're meant to be a reminder of the ways that we are all connected to one another. The fact that we are all dust serves as a reminder of the commonalities that we share with one another. I'll also say that, dust kind of gets a bad rap. Most of the time we think of dust as something to be vacuumed up or, wiped off of bookshelves or countertops or other surfaces in our households. But dust, dirt, the ground, the earth, whatever you want to call it, is full of nutrients. It's full of potential. It is the source and ground, literally, of life as we know it. Throughout all of human history, different cultures, especially indigenous ones, have recognized the importance, the power, the inherent value of the earth, revered it as the source and provider of life. In Genesis, we are told that God formed the first human being from the dust of the earth and breathed life into him. The word in Hebrew that is used is ruach, and it means breath, wind, spirit. And the name given to that first human is Adam, which in Hebrew translates to of the earth, or son of red earth. We humans are dirt and earth brought to life by the living spirit of God's breath. We are spirit-filled dust. And as theologian Peter Choi wrote recently in an article for the Christian Century magazine, quote, "Our origin from the dust of the ground doesn't just teach humility, it also reminds us that our calling is always toward the flourishing of life in the world." During this Lenten season, we will be singing, "Lord, let my heart be good soil," as our offertory response every week, so that we can be reminded of this call to be like the soil of the earth and facilitate the flourishing of life in ourselves, in our neighbors, and in the natural world around us. Our guest preacher from 2 Sundays ago was author and theologian Brian McLaren, and during his sermon, he reflected on Psalm 19 and the importance of reconnecting with nature. He gave us a homework assignment to go outside with no screens, no distractions, to go for a walk and just be at one with nature. I won't ask how many of us actually did that homework assignment, but maybe we can give it a try during this Lenten season. Because we humans have a tendency to view ourselves as being separate from the natural world, removed from the natural order. But even with the special distinction that we were given of being created in God's image, we are still a part of God's creation. Being told that we are dust, and to dust we shall return, doesn't just remind us how we are connected with and similar to all other humans. It also reminds us of how we are connected with and similar to all of creation as well. Our own well-being and flourishing is tied up with, dependent on the well-being and flourishing of our planet. What if this Lenten season we tried to feel that ashen smudge on our foreheads long after we have scrubbed it off with soap and water? To feel the grit of it and let that feeling connect us to the earth from which we were made, to the earth to which we owe our lives, the earth that we were given to shepherd and guide, to steward and care for. As you can see, this practice of being marked with a cross of ash, of being told that we are dust, and to dust we shall return, is a very nuanced and multi-layered liturgical act. But despite all of the pontificating that I have been doing, despite the different messages and meanings that this act conveys, the fact remains that it still is a little hypocritical in light of what Jesus said in our gospel reading for tonight. True, our motivation behind the act is what really matters, right? And our motivation is not to receive notoriety or attention from others, although we will be taking ash selfies for the BLC Instagram account, so even there we fall a little short of the intended goal. And I think that's where the truth of the matter lies. We will always fall a little short of the intended goal. Although we strive to follow the teachings of Jesus and walk in his way, to rise to the occasion, we are still human. We are still plagued by sin. We give in to temptation, and our faith will falter. The ways that we act out in the world, the things that we say and do are sometimes at odds with the things that we proclaim here on Sunday morning or Wednesday night. I'm not saying that it's all the time, or even most of the time, but I will be the first to admit that I do not live the perfect Christian life 100% of the time, and my guess is that the same is true for all of you. We all fall short. We respond with anger when compassion is what's really needed. We choose ourselves when we should be generous. We live in ways that are based in scarcity when we know that God promises abundance. Despite our best efforts to be otherwise, we are the hypocrites that Jesus warned us about. That's actually one of the complaints that many people have about the church, that it's full of hypocrites. They find it really hard to take seriously a group of people who say one thing yet do another. And I can see how they would feel that way. I've had more than one conversation about this with Pastor Laura, and I love her response to such critiques, because she says that the church is not made up of people who are like Jesus. Rather, we are the people who know we need Jesus the most, which is so true. Because if we were perfect, we wouldn't need the daily course-correcting help that faith offers us. If we followed Jesus' teachings to the letter, we wouldn't need to come and confess, to repent and receive forgiveness. As Dear Abby once said, the church is a hospital for sinners, not a museum for saints. And as far as the whole hypocrite thing goes, I recently saw this quote that I absolutely love. This church is not full of hypocrites. There's always room for more. Or to fashion it after what we boldly proclaim here at Bethlehem every Sunday, all hypocrites are welcome. All of us who try our best but don't get it right. All of us who occasionally give in to the allure of public recognition when we should be focused on growing as people and deepening our relationship with God. All of us who say one thing here in the pews, but then for whatever reason have trouble putting it into practice out there in the real world. And all of us who endeavor to walk humbly while also wearing a big old cross on our foreheads that basically functions as a sign that says, I went to church today. We are exactly the ones for whom the church and God's grace and Jesus' guidance are intended. So, my fellow hypocrites, on this night and on every night, may you remember and give thanks for the fact that you are dust, and to dust you shall return. Amen.